everyone, and welcome to the first talk of our coffee lecture series. Rita Gautschy will present the Swiss National Data and Service Center for the Humanities to us. So, Rita, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen now, and you should be able to see the slides ideally now. So thank you very much for the invitation to present DaSCH here, the Swiss National Data and Service Center for the Humanities. And I want to start with what's the characteristics of our repository, why it may be nice for you to choose DaSCH as repository. So one of our main characteristics is that the DaSCH keeps databases alive. This means the data can be queried and also edited directly in our generic front end, and you can do that also after the research project is finished. So you can update your data. Another characteristic is that each project defines its own data model. So there is not one overarching data model where you have to fit your data in, but you're free to define your own data model. Then not only each project has a permanent persistent identifier, we use archival resource keys, so-called ARKs, but each resource within your data set has its own persistent identifier. So for example, if you have 100 letters you're editing, then each of the letters has its own ARK identifier. And if you cite a certain letter in a publication, you can give this persistent identifier and guide people really to the data directly. We are a national repository and conforming to FAIR principles. So data must be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Concerning findability, we have a metadata browser. The address is listed here. If you don't know the kind of projects we have, you can go there, type in keywords and take a look whether we have data that might be interesting for you or not. So this concerns the metadata of a project. Then the data themselves are accessible via a generic front end on one hand. So that's the more user-friendly way, and of course over our API. Our API is based on widely adopted open standards, and concerning reusability, we require that each project gives a license to their data so that it's clear for other people what is allowed with this data. We have a historically based strength in bitstream data, especially images. This has to do with the story, the background of DaSCH, so its precursors developed or emerged from the imaging lab, the University of Basel. Our platform can be used as a virtual research environment already during the project phase. This has one major advantage because then no data migration, data cleaning and migration of the data at the end of the lifetime of the project is necessary for archiving the data. To achieve this, an early involvement of DaSCH is essential and ideally already in the pre-submission phase so that we can discuss how one can achieve this. This does not always work, of course, but if you have images with several properties, information accompanying these images, probably our platform is usable for you as virtual research environment. If you are working on a sophisticated edition with TEI XML, for example, you can't use our platform currently during the project phase, but only for archiving your data. So it really depends in this case. Then concerning time horizon, end of 2024, currently we have one generic web application to display the data. But what is planned is to have project-specific modular configurable presentation front end that can be adapted by projects to their own needs within certain limits. For example, the logo, maybe also the colors, and especially also functionalities depending on the type of the project, because in addition has other needs than, for example, a GLAM project. So this is work we recently started, but of course we cannot, and this is very important, develop very project-specific display of data. We have to stay generic. A few key technical points. We have a graph database, and the data are stored in an RDF triple store, and the bitstream data, such as images, audios, or videos, in a triple IF-based media server. Also below here are the base ontologies and the project ontologies. On top of this, we have our middleware, our API, and from there, queries can be sent to the triple store. And we use Graph Search, that's an own development, but basically a subset of Sparkle. And what happens here in this layer with DSP API is one important thing is that permissions are checked there. So you send a query, and then there is checked, oh, what are your permissions? Are you allowed to see a resource, or are you not allowed to see a resource? This happens in this middle layer, and that's why you have to go through here. Further up, we have DSP tools. That's our Python tool for creating ontologies and for bulk uploading the data. So if we receive the data from projects at the end of the lifetime, this is the way how data get into our triple store. The second option is to use our DSP app. This is this generic web application, which I mentioned already, where you can input or enter the data. Then you see on the right-hand side here in other colors, project-specific applications. This is something which we cannot support any longer. So we have the DSP app, our generic application, and the modular application, which is developed currently. We follow linked open data standards, so we use RDF, RDFS, OWL, and SHACL, for example. And another point to mention maybe is that all source code and documentation is freely accessible on GitHub. Now I want to show you our generic web application. I'm now on our productive server. When you go there, you have up here a search bar. Here you can do a full text search. For this full text search, we use Lucene query syntax. Then you have this advanced search option. I go here now. You have to select a project, and then one can select a resource and search, or one can even go further down and select single properties for a search. And then we have the expert option. This is then really a graph search query which when you are familiar with Sparkle, I think you will recognize how it works. What is done here? We have the project in Incunabula, and we search for all titles of a book with this query. And we can try this now. And I will choose a nice example, the so-called Narrenschiff. We receive then on the right the book. The book has several pages. Down here, if we stay with book, we have more or less the metadata of the book that were provided. Here would be the link at URI to Swisscovery, for example. And then the book, of course, has single pages. And we can move from page to page here. So this is the second page. There is not much information because it's empty. It only says this page is part of the book. But if we go further, you see here we have the information that belongs to this page. And you can move on quicker. Yeah, and here the information is updated. You can also change to the last page, for example. Then here you have the citation, the ARC link. You can copy it, and now you could enter it into a publication, for example. You can zoom in here. That's maybe not the most interesting page to show this. Let's try another one. You see, you can zoom in. And then there is an option, but that you can do annotations. But to show this, I have to leave our productive server and move to my local instance. Otherwise, I risk to alter the data on the productive server. Now I'm logged in, otherwise I'm not allowed to do annotations, of course. And let's query. Here I have the image, an image from the Temple of Dendera in Egypt, and I prepared annotations. You can see here I made 3 already. You can draw here with this pencil. And now I do something, doesn't matter. It's that I can delete it afterwards. You can choose a color and say submit, and then you have a new annotation. They are all listed here. Time is progressing rapidly, so I just want to change to our prototype for this configurable presentation environment we want to build until the end of 2024. And this is based on the data of one edition of the Bernoulli Euler online edition now, which is RDF data. So first you have to accept. You see the license down here. That's the start page. And there we have different data sets. And I choose one, for example, the Meditationes now. We started a search. Okay, this is not to go further. Another subset of data, the Goldbach data. Thus you have a starting page, and then you may have different subsets where you can query the data. This is the same advanced search option with which I showed you quickly before. It's the same functionality, and then you get some results. Time is over already, I realize. Thus, I will stop here and would like to see whether there are any questions from your side.
So it seems that there are no questions. So thanks a lot, Rita, for your great presentation and the insight into the DaSCH. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. And if there are questions later, you can contact us at DaSCH.